The Who are one of Britain's biggest ever bands and can still pack in the crowds at shows all around the world.
It was one particular gig that cemented their reputation, the concert that became the legendary Live at Leeds album. But as Cary Grant finds out, it almost didn't happen.
This is an extension lead, and this is the best live album ever made. Without this, we may never have had this. In the late 60s, The Who reflected the revolutionary spirit of the times, with a stage show that was exciting, bordering on anarchic. The band wanted to capture their explosive live sound on record. They chose to record a concert in Leeds. Dr. Simon Warner, Leeds University's lecturer in rock, takes up the story.
The Beatles had done extraordinary work, Pink Floyd had done amazing work in the studio, but it was a much more unwieldy, cumbersome affair to take gear on the road and record. And I think it was just around this time that the scale of the recording equipment was just about right to be able to move it around and capture the sound faithfully.
Roger Daltrey, Keith Moon, Pete Townshend and John Entwistle were at the height of their powers and ready to record. But the students who organised the concert weren't sure they could cope. It quickly became clear that the venue didn't have enough power.
The complications started on the Friday afternoon when the recording equipment arrived, and they asked for an additional supply of about 30 amps, electrical supply of about 30 amps. And we didn't have it.
The band had the biggest speaker rig the organisers had ever seen, so the recording gear had to move downstairs next to the kitchens, the only place with a separate power supply. I can't imagine them liking that very much.
If they hadn't done it, then they wouldn't have had the recording. There just wasn't the power available on the upper level, so they tapped into the supply for the ovens.
So The Who made their album plugging in to where they make the pizza. What a great thought.
I don't think we had pizza in 1970.
The 3-hour concert took place on Valentine's Day 1970, and it all happened here. The refectory was full. In fact, there were 1,000 students who didn't have tickets, so they had to climb up onto the roof so that they could feel the gig. Local people said the music was so loud that you could hear it throughout the city centre. In the crowd was Nigel Abbott, a geography student who found himself with a VIP access because he had a cheap camera around his neck.
The camera was a passport to going up to the front and being in that little area in front of the stage, which allowed you to be able to wander up and down and no one questioned you.
Wow! That really captures the atmosphere, doesn't it?
Well, this was Roger Daltrey in his pomp, wasn't it? I remember it was a very hot and sweaty night, and they were on song that night. I mean, they really were. As a band, they performed fantastically. It was one of those nights that just worked. And it was just a fantastic night.
Were your ears ringing after the gig?
Yes.
When the record was released, it came in this plain brown wrapper. The Who maintained they always wanted the packaging to look like a bootleg copy. They wanted it to reflect the raw and powerful sound of the record inside the sleeve. And the final twist in the Live at Leeds story is that it should have been Live at Hull, where the Who recorded the following night's gig.
They preferred the acoustics of the City Hall in Hull. But when they listened to the tapes, they found that John Entwistle's bass guitar hadn't been recorded.
Who knows whether it would have been better if Hull had been released. It would have been less alliterative. We wouldn't have had Live at Leeds. So in many ways, I think that particular accident of history worked in The Who's favour, worked in the album's favour.
So thanks to a dodgy cable in Hull and John's extension cables here, the Who put Leeds on the rock map. And after the Who did it, live albums became the in thing. The Rolling Stones even recorded here, trying to capture some of the magic. But no live album was ever as heavy or as influential as Live at Leeds.
Indeed, heavy stuff.